Welcome back to another episode of Illinicast, the most depressing podcast on the Big Banter Network. Another crushing loss to Nebraska, where I don't think Nebraska was a good football team, but we were just a far worse football team. And we're now basically staring 2-6 in the face, as this weekend we have the red hot, well, up until last weekend, Maryland Terrapins on our football schedule. Today to talk about the Maryland game, because I refuse to talk anymore about the Nebraska game, we have Chris Trickey from the Turtle Heads Talk podcast from the Big Banter Network. Thanks for joining me, Chris.
Thank you for having me, Sonny. I want to talk a little bit about your football team. Obviously, we have a big matchup coming up this weekend against you, which I had overlooked on the schedule, but I think it's a big turning point in Maryland's season. Either we come out and blow the doors off you guys because we're mad from the game against Ohio State, or we take it the other way and struggle to beat you or possibly even lose to your vaunted Illini.
Vaunted is not a word I'd use right now, but it's one of those where, if I didn't just watch that game that we just played last Friday, maybe I would be a little bit more optimistic. But Maryland, as they are, so what I like to do is before I record each podcast is I have all the 60-minute games recorded for each of the teams. So I try to fast forward through one or two of each. And bottom line is you guys are really good football team, and we just have so many holes. And there's just the season is on the brink of disaster at this point. If we're not already there, if we don't win one of these next 2 weeks, we're talking about not even going bowling. And you're talking to a guy who had us winning 9 games. And my co-host even had us. We both had us winning the Big Ten West. So this is kind of demoralizing for us. It's hard for us to show face. But here we are. Trying to trudge along. But let's talk a little bit about Maryland football. So, what were your expectations coming into this season?
I believe we were looking at 10 wins was the consensus, give or take a win. And that's counting a bowl win is what we had said at the beginning. But we certainly got excited after running off 5 in a row. We all predicted on our podcast, because we're pro Maryland all the time. You may have noticed in the power rankings, we always put ourselves first.
Right.
But we lost a bet to the Ohio podcast, and now we can't do that anymore.
I listened to that podcast. I heard that. Great idea.
I can't believe Jordan took the bait, but we're gonna stand by it. But really, as we mentioned on our latest podcast, we don't believe that Ohio State won that game. We lost the game. We had the offense clicking in the first half of the game until an ill-fated call where Talia threw a pick 6 with like 12 seconds left in the half, and we could have easily just gone one more play and kicked a field goal and added 3 more points. And there were a lot of mistakes in the second half. We played undisciplined, which has been a mark of the program for years, but we thought this year we had everything buttoned up. That's why I mentioned the game against Illinois upcoming is so important to see if we're going to continue to play like the old Maryland or play like the team we thought we had after running off 5 straight.
Yeah, I think Illinois is probably the perfect setup for you guys, just because both our starting running backs are essentially not going to be playing. So we're going to be relying on 2 freshmen running backs, and obviously, Brett Bielema was supposed to have a good rushing, coaching constantly, but we really haven't lived up to the previous hype this year. So maybe some new blood will kind of inject some excitement into the season, but I'm not so sure.
Well, it seems like Altmaier is your offense. I probably have watched less Illinois games than you have this season. I'm pretty certain of that. But every time I look at even the highlights or just going back and looking through the box scores, it seems like he's leading the team in passing and rushing almost every game. And then some of the games that you've looked really bad in is when you couldn't get your rushing game going, and you've had to throw 45, 48 times, which doesn't seem to be your forte. I do feel for you as a fan because I look at Maryland and we've got receivers coming out of our ears,
I know.
and we've got a host of running backs.
Yeah.
So you certainly don't have the personnel that we do. But I'm concerned about Bielema. Is he going to be able to recruit? Because we're having a hard time now. You said you want to talk basketball in a little bit, and I can't wait. But we've been trying to bring in some recruits, both basketball and football, and have been losing them in the NIL game. So I don't know what your allotment is there. I'm sure you're not privy to the numbers. I know you have a lot of famous and very rich alumni. I'm sure Larry Ellison could maybe buy you a receiver or a linebacker or something. But is that a concern for you going forward to be able to, especially with the new teams coming into the Big Ten? How are teams like Illinois and Maryland going to compete when you're going against USC, who, from all reports, is getting Caleb Williams north of $10 million to play college quarterback?
I mean, you nailed it. It's one of those things where, I guess I'll answer the Brett Bielema question first. That's kind of the question that's on all our minds right now. I'm a big fan of Brett Bielema. I think he was a fantastic hire for the Illinois football program. The only thing I'm slightly concerned about is like his recruiting wasn't necessarily great a decade ago when he was winning Rose Bowls with Wisconsin. He was recruiting 3 stars, 4 stars, and coaching them up. It's a different state of college football now. The transfer portal is a huge aspect. And one thing is, Brett essentially this offseason basically made it known that he used our NIL funds, which, we're probably in the bottom third of the Big Ten. We have a decent amount, but most of it is used for basketball. That's why our basketball recruiting classes tend to be pretty high up there because our fans are pretty fickle. Our basketball program is historically better than our football program. And so that's kind of where a lot of the funds go. So the limited funds that we do have in football, what Brett's strategy this offseason was to retain the talent that we have on the team. That's why a Johnny Newton didn't jump to the NFL necessarily last offseason. That's why Keith Randolph stayed another year. That's why Isaiah Williams is going to have a decision after this year whether he wants to jump or whether he wants to become the all-time wide receiver leader at Illinois while making probably a little bit more money than he's going to make in the NFL. I mean, I don't mind that strategy, and I didn't mind that strategy in the offseason. But what you're going to see on our team now is a lot of pretty good high end talent with a lot of low end talent. We didn't bring in the transfers needed to kind of supplement the stud players that we have. And I genuinely think like our offensive line, which is supposed to be a Bielema staple,
Right?
particularly the right side, is one of the 5 worst in Power 5 football. I mean, it's Luke Altmaier is essentially running for his life every time he snaps the ball. And to circle back on the Luke Altmaier point, I mean, you're right. He is probably the brightest part of the season. His growth, just as a passer, but he's also a young player. Like I think he's about to start his 8th game in his entire career. And what I'm worried about and what Austin's worried about, my co-host, is I don't want his confidence to start getting shot because he's already the most talented quarterback Illinois has had in a very long time. Tommy DeVito was a very good quarterback last year, but he was like a game manager. He wouldn't lose games for you. Luke Altmaier's capable of winning games for you. So,
But
it's
you
one
need
of
to protect him. And you mentioned your offensive line not being up to snuff. Um, Paddock isn't a stiff, but are you prepared to? I mean, what happens if Altmaier goes down? I mean, that, like I said, he's essentially your entire offense. Can Paddock replicate what Altmaier does? I mean, I guess if they thought he could, they'd have him starting.
yeah, I mean, you think about it, like, he's it's kind of a legacy play with Paddock. He's not even on scholarship. His grandfather played for University of Illinois. He had a semi decent career at I think it was Illinois State. I believe he was at. He's definitely. I mean, he might be serviceable, but he hasn't looked like he's anything special. The couple times he's come in to play. If Luke goes down, it's one of those where it would be horrific for the season, but where's the season going anyway at this point? You know what I mean? Like right now, the only games I see us capable of winning on our schedule is Indiana, and I'm even unsure at this point about Northwestern. The saving grace is like we have both teams at home, which is why I think I would still favor us. But that's of course with a healthy Luke Altmaier.
Right.
Should he go down, I'm not sure. And I just want to, finish your other thought about the Maryland and University of Illinois competing with the new Big Ten. It's going to be tough. At least Maryland has that, fun, exciting offense, and I've always had a soft spot for Mike Locksley because of his contributions to previous Illinois teams. Him and Zook recruited the hell out of the Maryland area back in the day. So the questions with him were always his coaching,
We question it too, especially after last week.
Yeah, and it's tough. It's you're going to get a rock solid recruiter. At least you guys have tended your trajectory is going up. Every year you're seemingly winning more and more games. It's
We're
more
also
about
putting guys in the NFL, and that's the end game for these kids that aren't playing for the love of the game, which is 90%. I mean, it's very few that aren't there for the possibility of becoming multimillionaires, but we put guys in the NFL at a higher rate than a Northwestern or a Minnesota or an Illinois. So in the end, that helps a lot with the recruiting.
that will help. And I know I'm not trying to offend you when I say this because we're the same way. Like I perceive Maryland as being more of a basketball school than a football school. Am I right? Or am
Oh,
I
no offense. We say it every week on our podcast.
right? So do you guys have the same sort of issue with the spreading around of your NIL, or is yours kind of more evenly spread out to your knowledge?
We just don't have much of it. We've lost a couple of basketball recruits of late. One young man, I believe his last name was Hodge, just last week signed with Villanova, and the word from the inside was that Villanova gave him 3 times what Maryland was offering. So,
Yeah. See, on
I mean,
the basketball side, it's very rarely that we lose anyone for monetary reasons. A lot of times, people don't want to play for the style of coaching that Brad Underwood is kind of famous for. But I guess just to finish up that conversation, the Marylands and the University of Illinois, we've got to kind of find our niche. What kind of player are we going to be recruiting? I'm like right now, I'm extremely worried. This year was supposed to be a year we're supposed to lift us off. Obviously, we came crashing down last year at the end of the season, losing out on the Big Ten West and essentially choking it away. But a bowl game this year, we're not historically a great recruiting team, but we've got a good coaching staff, or so we thought. So Brett's kind of got to, I think, and maybe you agree with me when I say this, is the advantage that Maryland and Illinois is going to have over a lot of the dominant ACC teams, Big 12 teams, the more successful teams in those conferences, is we're going to be making $20 million more dollars than them pretty much on an annual basis. And with that being said, I think programs like ours are going to have to make sure that our facilities are top notch. Like they're going to wow every single recruit that walks in through those doors. And I also think that, in particular, Illinois, and I know Locksley's on a different level. We need to lock down some ace recruiters because right now we have more developmental guys, and that can only play for so long. Bringing in the 3 stars, who you have to wait 2-3 years to develop, because nowadays, if the 3-star doesn't feel like he developed enough in year one, he's going to leave you. And
I was
so
going to say, or you develop them and then they get good enough to then go get more money at another school or more
exactly.
prestige at a larger school. To Let's get off the NIL because I still don't understand it, and I think it's going to take us all to hell in a handbasket. But to finish up on this Saturday's game,
Yeah.
your offense, what is it that you need to do from an offensive standpoint to win the game against Maryland? I don't know how well you know our defense, but we've got excellent defensive backs. Um, we haven't been giving up a ton of rushing yards either. Um, Prior to the OSU game, we were only one of three teams, I think, to win every game by 18 points or more. So that part of that was holding teams from scoring too much on us. What offensively can you do to win the game?
I mean, I'm not optimistic at all. If all of a sudden you told me that Illinois won the game, and then you made me guess what the game script was, it would
Sure.
essentially be that our offensive line miraculously fixed itself. Um, and we scored points when we were in the red zone. We're not doing too bad in the Big Ten when it comes to yardage per game, but we're just not closing it down and getting our 6 points or 7 points once we get close to the end zone. We're one of the slowest starting first quarter teams in the entire country. It's like I don't know if you watched the Nebraska game. We drove all the way down the field. We're at the 6-inch yard line. We had two chances to convert, and we went for on fourth down, and we still didn't get it. And as soon as that happened, like I knew, like we were going to be in trouble. So if somehow Illinois were to beat Maryland on Saturday, it would be we played ball control offense. Basically, our offensive line somehow fixed itself to the point where Luke didn't feel all the pressure that he had to win the game himself. We were milking the clock. We were giving it to our young running backs who were willing to, kill the clock. Luke made the passes that he needs to make. Isaiah Williams, I'd imagine, would have had one or two really key plays, and and defensively, just a couple pick sixes. Right now, our defensive backs are very young, and we lost three guys in the top 70 picks to the NFL last year, so they're very green back there. And new defensive coordinator Aaron Henry's, he's got a spotlight on him too, because obviously he's replacing a guy who we just lost to at Purdue 2 weeks ago. So in the off chance that we somehow won, the only way would be is that we kept the ball away from your offense by controlling the ball, by running the ball, by getting to third and short situations and letting Luke make the plays that we all think that he can make to extend drives and to punch it in and get the 7 points when we needed. And certainly the game had to have gone under. That for
Oh,
sure.
for sure. But I think you're pretty close to the truth because Maryland also has been a slow starting team before the. Well, I know at least in the first three games we were down by 10 points or more to each one of our opponents, even against cupcakes like Charlotte, I believe, was our second game.
Wow.
And then we came out and blew the doors off of them in the second half. But if you can score early and, like you said, control the clock, keep the ball on the ground, Talia we want the same thing for him that you want for your quarterback, and that's for him not to try to win it himself.
Mhm.
And when he does, that's when we get the performance we got against Ohio State. So yeah, I think you got it right. Ball control, create turnovers, but and again, the only thing that we want is to play mistake free. We've got really good special teams, both in the kicking, punting, and return game. So I see that making a difference for us. But would you like to make a wager? We have made a wager with. We started with Michigan State. They were supposed to send us Fago and a couple of other sundry items. and we were going to send them Old Bay seasoning, some burger cookies. That's BERGER. Utz chips and National Bohemian beer. We won that. We received nothing from Spartan Dog or whoever they are up there. And then we also made a bet with Indiana. I don't know if they were supposed to send us corn. I'm not sure, but we've heard nothing from them. But we made the bet with Ohio. Well, Jordan made the bet about it, where we rank ourselves with Ohio State. And we lost that, so we're going to honor it. Is there something very unique to the greater Urbana area that would be worthy of betting?
Like I'm right outside Chicago, so
Well, you can't send me a deep dish pizza or a hot dog with everything dumped on top of it.
right. So, but I'm just trying to think. Like, I know you can ship Portillo's or something, and you'd shove it in the oven. But the problem is, like, I just don't know what I would bet because there's no way we're going to win this game. Whether I don't even know what the spread is at this point. It was like 14 or 14 and a half last check, and I hammered Maryland minus 14 minus 14. So it's one of those where if and we don't have to come up with it now, but if we could come up with terms, maybe I'd be open to it. But like, I just have zero faith in us keeping it close right now. So yeah, because I mean, we're not going to win money line. Obviously, there's 0 chance or 1% chance that's going to happen. So uh, I don't know if you can think of something. I could be down for it, but
All right. How about if if Maryland wins, then you guys have to bag on Purdue like we do just to fire up those guys because they seem so sensitive, and I get a kick out of it. And if Illinois wins, then I don't know. We'll still send you a bunch of stuff.
how about if Illinois wins? Um,
I leave Dylan alone. No dice.
no. We haven't talked to the Purdue guys yet. So I have. Well, I get. You know.
We go back and forth on Slack. They don't like us much.
Yeah. No.
Actually,
I've noticed.
I'm
I've
pretty
noticed.
sure the entire state of Indiana hates all amphibious creatures at this point.
Okay, fair enough. I'll join you on the Purdue slander, and then whatever package that you had planned on sending the other schools, should they have one, just send it over our way. How's that?
I'll do it. Sounds great.
Okay, so let's before we get off though, let's talk a little bit basketball. Big Ten
Yes.
Media Days where it was this week. What's your outlook on a high level for the Maryland basketball team?
Well, if you know us turtleheads, we think we're going to go to the championship every single year. We're extra excited to have Willard as the coach now instead of Mark Turgeon, both from a recruiting and a coaching standpoint. But right now, we've got two of the top 5 players in the Big Ten by somebody's ranking the other day. I saw on X, I believe, had Juju and Jameer as all Big Ten first team preseason or something. But I think it's got to be Final Four or bust because we need it from a recruiting standpoint. We've got a lot of right now. We've got 2025. We got guys coming in, but we have nobody that we have nailed down for 2024, and we're losing them left and right. So we need a really strong showing this season, and we've got 2 freshmen coming in that I really, really am excited about, and hopefully seeing them getting a lot of playing time and thriving on the Maryland team will let some of these high school kids know that they're not going to have to sit on the bench for 2 years to get any playing time. I mean, years ago, Maryland was like you would like your football team to be able to still do, and that's get the lower level guys, coach them up for a few years, and by the time they graduate, they're ready for the pros. But everything's so microwavable now. We need the young guys to play great so that the next crop knows that they can play for 2 years and go to the NBA or whatever it is they want to do.
You hinted at it, and from the little I was watching of Maryland basketball, like I also kind of liked what I saw from Kevin Willard. Can you give me like a more in depth, like what his strengths and his weaknesses are as a head coach?
Well, as far as strengths, um, he seems a lot more even keeled. Just me personally watching him, I've not heard this from any other player, but when he does yell, it's for a reason. Turgeon just seemed to be a yeller because he had seen other successful coaches do that. Um, and also, Willard has a more comprehensive plan before they get out there. It seemed like Turgeon just kind of let them run around, and if you're a good shooter, fine, shoot it every time you get the ball. But they're much more disciplined now. Um, as far as rotationally, he gets more guys involved. Uh, Caleb Swanton Roger is my personal project. He's a 7+ foot kid from Canada who got limited minutes last year, but they had an exhibition series in Rome a few months ago, and he really did well there. Expecting big things out of him. He'll be a sophomore. But one of the biggest things that we like about Willard so far, because it's early, we can't really write a book on him yet, but he has embraced the former players and embraced the campus culture. It seemed like Mark Turgeon was just a hired gun that came in. He was a little paranoid. He didn't want other people's input, and therefore he kept a lot of former players away from the team. We have interviewed a number of former Maryland players from the Gary Williams era that said that either they were never contacted in some cases, or in others, they were discouraged from coming around because that just wasn't Mark Turgeon's scene. He kind of wanted to control everything while he wasn't. I mean, nobody can do that. You know what I mean? It's like you're chasing too many tails. So I think that was part of his problem. It was his ego, and and that's another thing with Willard. He's got better assistant coaches, and he allows them to do their jobs. Turgeon just had this kind of dictatorial attitude, and that was his major failing, in my opinion.
Do you think Maryland basketball still has what it takes to what it the Gary Williams area?
Well, it's totally different now for some of the same reasons we mentioned when we were talking football, but um, Gary had a problem recruiting the what we call the DMV area, DC, Maryland, and Virginia, where and Turgeon started getting a few guys from nearby, but Willard has been really great about it. And it seemed like for a while Maryland had such a reputation of not being able to get the local talent that we would overlook guys and not even try that hard because we knew they weren't going to come. I mean, to have Carmelo Anthony and Kevin Durant growing up within 15 minutes from the arena, and you can't even get them to give you a second look. That really hurt coming up as a Maryland fan. But now it seems like we've got a more direct pipeline to a very large network of really good players in the, like I said, what we call the DMV.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So your goal is still Final Four. Like, do you think this team is capable of it, or you think you?
Oh, absolutely. No, from what I saw last year, I mean, we lost in the second round of the NCAA tournament, and that was with half the team is gone for one.
Mm-hmm.
Half of the starters from last year, um, and our first two guys off the bench because they saw some of these young guys coming in and knew they weren't going to get the playing time. Ian Martinez is one. He was a big contributor last year, and he decided to transfer out because the writing was on the wall for him. And we've just reloaded and gotten stronger, dropped some dead weight, got some fresh legs. I see this team. I would be disappointed if we didn't at least make the Final Four. I mean, like I said, I'm hoping national championship, but that's going to depend on a lot of factors. I think the Big Ten is weaker this year than it was last year, so that helps. Um, Certainly having that big dork from Michigan transfer out helped. But I think it's if we don't do something this year, really push the program forward, it could hurt in recruiting, and that seems like all that college sports is about now is recruiting. So yeah, if we don't make the Final Four, I'll be highly disappointed. But I expect, yeah, at least Final Four.
Yeah, I think I for the most part agree with your Big Ten analysis. I think Michigan State and Purdue are kind of at their own level up there, the top two teams in the conference, and we're bringing back a lot of players. And I'm very confident about our team, except about our point guard position. We had a hole there last year. We had a couple of young kids who decided to transfer out because again, that's just what today's game is like. Brad Underwood is taking a huge gamble on Ty Rodgers to be our point guard, and he's a bigger guy, who you wouldn't necessarily think is a point guard, but he said in the Big Ten media coverage, he's like, everyone else is worried about point guard, but I'm not. And so me, I know you guys aren't shy about being super optimistic Maryland fans, and I had the Illinois football team winning 9 football games this year, so I know a little bit about being optimistic. So at least as of now, I'm staying positive, and I think we we should be able to contend. Our schedule kind of broke for us in a couple ways. I have to check it again, but Brad Underwood needs to get to that Sweet 16 because he's been a very successful coach, regular season coach. He's been arguably the best Big Ten regular season coach of the last 5 years, but at some point the Illinois fan base, if you think the football fans are annoying, are even I'm saying as a basketball fandom, they're one of the most obnoxious that you're going to find. And the longer he goes without making to the Sweet 16, his seat's going to get hotter and hotter. And, that's just, nobody wants that. But
well, considering the current makeup of your team, do you feel that's within your grasp? I mean, I'm talking Final Four. You guys preseason are rated higher than us. So, I mean, I would think that you should feel confident in at least a Sweet 16, don't you?
But I felt confident in going to the Sweet 16 the last 2 or 3 years. We've had the team
Right.
we've underperformed in the once the tournament starts, so that's the worry. Yeah, I mean,
and that's what gets coaches fired too.
Right.
I mean, you just mentioned you're kind of like on the edge with Underwood. You like him, but so you're saying that if it's not 16 or better, then you might be coach shopping.
I mean, the whispers have already started. But it's a simple matter of me personally, no. I just think, I mean, this would take forever, but if you look at it on a context basis, Houston, who we lost to 2 years ago, was way better than they were seeded. We had one of the worst when we lost to Loyola. We should have beaten Loyola, but still, Loyola again was seeded in the RPI way higher than we deserve to face in that second round. But those are just excuses.
Oh no, we make them all the time on the Maryland end. I mean, even going back to the ACC days, we always thought the refs were against us, and the NCAA always gave us the worst region. Duke always got to play somewhere in North Carolina, and they'd send us out to Arizona. And we felt going into this past year's NCAA tournament that Maryland was seeded harshly. So, no, feel free to make that excuse in front of me because I've done it a number of times.
So, I know we've talked about this kind of ad nauseum when it comes to football, but as a Maryland fan, you brought up the ACC. Do you miss some of those rivalries at all? Or
I absolutely do.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I mean, I still hate Duke, and UNC, and well, all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like any of those guys. Virginia Tech. We got to play Virginia earlier this season and beat them, obviously. But no, I do miss it. Now, I miss the old ACC. It's about to be cannibalized or taken apart in this new restructuring, I'm sure. But no, I miss the old days. Sure, when a game against Wake Forest meant something, and or Georgia Tech. I mean, most of those schools aren't even any good anymore. I mean, when Virginia Tech came from the Big East and joined the ACC, I remember that being a really big deal. And Syracuse came in, and but no, I really do miss it.
Have you been
But
able
you
to
know,
have any like rivalries starting to brew on the Big Ten side?
well, I personally have since we've started this big banner network, and I've gotten on Slack a few times. Yeah, I've built a few rivalries, but uh, everyone seems to now they say this, but I'm sure they feel differently than what they're saying in front of me. But some of the other podcasts have mentioned that they really don't look at Maryland as even a member of the Big Ten yet, and we're kind of like the stepchild. To use that analogy, because we don't have the history, because we don't have the long-standing rivalry. Now, let us beat Michigan or Ohio State or Penn State a couple times in a row, or have a few seasons where they're looking at the schedule and saying, "Oh no, we don't want to have to play Maryland." Then maybe we could really have some true rivalries. But no, I can't pick out one school in the Big Ten that I circle. Well, now it's that team from West Lafayette, but that's for personal reasons.
Yeah.
But no, there's not that Duke, that Carolina, where you feel even better the next day because you beat them, unless it's one of the big three in football. But as far as basketball, which is what really matters, no, there's not that one school that we love to beat or hate to lose to. No.
Yeah, I mean, hand up, like, as you're talking about, like in high school, every single night I was watching Duke, Maryland, North Carolina, whoever, every single night. The ACC was the conference to watch. So, admittedly, when I do think of Maryland, I don't necessarily think Big Ten just yet, but I think now moving forward, especially with us getting four new teams, everything is going to be unrecognizable moving forward. We know we've got, the four new teams coming. I've got, there's rumors out there that there's two more that are going to be coming our way shortly thereafter. And so, as it is right now, most of us in the Big Ten have been together for 30 years, and it's just Maryland is kind of new. Rutgers is kind of new, have the same idea. But moving
Yeah,
forward,
we're the new kids we're the new kids in the high school. Most of the other people are gonna pick on us or bully us and think we're dorks or whatever, and then we just have to learn to make friends or make enemies, as it were. But can you imagine, though? I mean, for us, we're living on the East Coast,
right.
Eastern time zone, and if we play USC in USC, it'll be middle of the night watching the ball game. I can't believe we let the whole West Coast come over. That really blows my mind about the Big Ten.
Yeah, I think it's all about money. Obviously,
Oh,
they
we
lock,
know that, but
yeah, locking down USC, UCLA. I do have one source who kind of knows a thing or two about what's going on in there, and they just announced it. I had been talking about this was going to happen. Is that like moving forward next season? The Big Ten's going to have 9 Friday night football games.
oh boy,
So that's the plan. What the Big Ten ultimately wants to do is they want to control the TV schedule for college football. Everyone's going to be tuning into Big Ten Friday nights. Now they've added a couple big names, the Washingtons, Oregons, obviously USC.
sure,
You're talking about premier matchups at every single time slot starting Friday night. And they want to go basically the NFL model so that, we're going to get ratings galore, and our TV deal, which is already the best in the entire country, goes up before any of the other conferences. So we're going to have first crack to get as much money as we want because we're already going to be having the highest ratings, and so it's not that I have to tell you, we all know it's strictly a financial play, and it's a hope that the Illinois and Marylands don't get too lost.
Yeah, I hope it's worth it. That's what I'm saying. I hope it's worth it. I hope enough of that money trickles down to the other programs, so that it evens the playing field a little bit. But I don't have hope for it. I just see uh, I see the conference being split into basketball and football schools. I mean, why would Indiana want to put any money into a football team just to get boat raced by Oregon, Washington, Michigan, Penn State? I mean, it's going to be a juggernauts. So why wouldn't they just concentrate on basketball? Maryland the same. Uh, Eventually, Michigan State with the debacle they've got going on with Mel Tucker, it'd be real easy to talk their trustees into just concentrating on basketball instead of football. I just don't. I don't have high hopes for it, but
Yeah.
we shall see.
Another thing I don't have high hopes for is going to be Illinois against Maryland, which is going to be Saturday. I think we got the afternoon game, 2:30. We're going to be on national TV, I believe, right? NBC. We're leading into the Notre Dame USC game.
I believe you're correct.
Well, Chris, tell our listeners where they can find you on social media.
That's the Turtleheads, available on Apple and Spotify. And look for Turtle Talk on Instagram and Twitter, all the other social medias. But thank you, Sonny, for having me on. And you're welcome to join the Turtleheads anytime. We'd love to reconvene when we have more of our cast partners together and chop it up with more basketball talk.
Yeah, I can't wait. We had some scheduling issues this week, so I couldn't make an appearance, but this won't be the last time we connect this season. Basketball season's right around the corner, and at least Illinois will hopefully at that point have something more positive to talk about than our football team.
Well, good luck on Saturday, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Sonny.
Once again, thank you to the Turtleheads Talking Podcast for coming on and giving us a few minutes of the Maryland viewpoints. We will be back next week talking about the Maryland football game. Just if you don't mind, please a nice like and subscribe on this YouTube channel. I know it costs you just nothing, but it really helps a small channel like this out. I can't say I'm optimistic about this game. I'm going to say Maryland minus 14, minus 14 and a half. That's probably what I'm going to go safe with. But I think the lock of the century will be that first half, whatever Maryland spread it is. Just throw your mortgage on it. Throw your kids' college funds on it. Regardless, we're going to keep showing up every single week, and you know where to find us. Please follow us on social media at Illinicast, and we will see you next week.